interesting. Thinking of the Age of Commerce, I feel like it's a phase that the Mongol Empire just doesn't really bother with. It doesn't, because it's a nomadic thing. The way, it operates, it doesn't put down roots. It doesn't bother with agriculture. It doesn't bother with industry. It just raids. It just says, oh, they've got some stuff. They've got some stuff. Let's go.
That's
and get
what it says
stuff
on the tin.
Yeah, exactly. So I wonder, although you've got the Silk Road, obviously, and you've got all of that happening through sort of Central Asia, the Mongols are kind of unique, I suppose, in never bothering to sort of end the age of conquest, because it's constant conquest, and that's where they thrive. Their strength is in their kind of blitzkrieg sort of, fly in on horseback. Next thing, before anybody knows it, they've been raped and pillaged and all the rest of it. So they don't bother to kind of cultivate diplomatic links that would cultivate trade, because they don't need to bother. They just ride in and raid.
Yeah, I mean, I think another characteristic of the Mongol Empire is like you mentioned, like, they're nomadic people. So
yeah, I wonder, is it even an empire in that sense? I wonder. Because it's a huge... Yeah, I suppose it is, because it's huge, isn't it? It's enormous. And Genghis Khan...
Because I guess it goes back to kind of like, what do you define as an empire?
Well, the Khan, I suppose, Khan itself, the word, sort of means... I mean, I don't know exactly what it means. We can put it up on screen. But it kind of means emperor in a sense, doesn't it? It kind of means, the dude.
Yeah, but I think with the Mongol Empire, like, it's an empire unlike a lot of other traditional kind of empires that we would think about. In the sense that obviously, as nomadic people going on to, end up ruling the largest land-spanning empire ever, pretty much.
Yeah.
It's
wild, isn't it?
You wouldn't,
and to do all of that...
You wouldn't assume that that's the case.
To cover that much ground and never put down roots in the sense of... I mean, I suppose the Khans must have had fabulous palaces. There's the Coleridge poems there in Xanadu, where Kubla Khan something did repose, or whatever. I can't remember the York King. We could put it up. So there must have been. I mean, that's all fantasy. Obviously, I think that's romantic fantasy. I don't imagine Coleridge knew the first thing about Kubla Khan, but it's all it's all this kind of romantic sort of Orientalist fantasy stuff. But I wonder, were there actual palaces, or was it purely tents? Was it just tents everywhere? Bigger tents for the big guys and smaller tents for the smaller guys.
I think it depends on the era that you're looking at, because again, like, the Mongol Empire was, it lasted a long time.
Yeah.
And there's lots of different stages to that. Whether there's you've got the expansion, you have the conquest, and as we'll go over the other stages as well, you have all of the different phases that lead to the goal of an empire at the start of its cycle isn't necessarily going to be the goal halfway through.
Yeah.
Whereas, at the start it was just expanding, it was beating a few rival tribes, and then, it keeps on going and keeps on going. Eventually, after, I can't remember if it's, I might need to get me fact checked on this one, but obviously, Genghis Khan is the most notable figure in the Mongol Empire, in popular culture, I would say.
Yeah.
But his grandson Kublai was more famous for consolidating China, and I guess becoming like a true empire in like the traditional sense.
Yeah.
Because China is vast. It was unconquerable for a long time by the Mongols. They tried for a long time.
I suppose the wall must be the wall. Unless I'm being stupid, the wall must be to keep out the Mongols.
I mean, you would assume so. Which makes it even more ironic that they then were, ruled by the Mongols, and then it was to keep other people out. But we absolutely have to do an episode on the Mongol Empire, because again, there's such rich history, and you would never have been taught about it at school, especially not in the UK. That's what this is all about here. I never
knew. I mean, I'd heard the name, but I never knew anything about Genghis Khan, and that seems crazy.
Yeah,
that seems mad.
And if you're looking for and for any of our listeners who are looking for a kind of a show or a movie or anything kind of related to that is really good to watch, just pure entertainment value, watch Marco Polo on Netflix. It is
Yeah.
Incredible show. I mean,
Yeah.
highly recommend.
I've only seen the first episode. One of those things. I thought, well, that's brilliant, and then I never looked at it again. But it is fantastic.
Yeah, but no, it's a gripping watch.
I'm actually watching
when you watch the first couple episodes.
Yeah. I'm watching at the moment a really old and quite hokey but kind of great fun 70s. It's RAI Television, which is like an Italian TV network, and it's a version of Marco Polo, but it's in English with like John Gielgud. I mean, the cast is incredible. And it is really hokey and really sort of hammy, like a lot of those, like Claudius and all of those kind of 70s TV ones. But it is very, very well written. It's very, very good. But also from the less from the sort of Marco Polo side and more from the Genghis Khan side, there's a Russian-made film called, I think it's just called Mongol, The Rise of Genghis Khan, and it's the first, amazingly, even though it was made in like 2008, it was the first film about Genghis Khan to actually use a Mongolian actor to playing Genghis Khan. Before that, it had either been sort of, in the 50s Hollywood, it had been like, Omar Sharif had been used, because I guess they were like, well, he's vaguely Eastern, so whatever, even though he's, Middle Eastern, not.
Yeah, I mean, we can do a whole segment trying to cover like the casting ability of people in like the 50s.
But at least he wasn't. At least he wasn't like I think John Wayne did him in blackface, so that's obviously worse. But I mean, must be kind of hilarious. Must be so hilarious to watch. I need to have a look at it. But this is and then otherwise it had been Japanese actors, and there are plenty of Japanese films about him that use Japanese actors.
Yeah.
But this one is the first one, even though it's Russian made, so it puts another interesting twist on it. All the actors are Mongolian, and it's brilliant. It tells his really, really early life. It sort of stops before he's the great Khan, but he had an unbelievable early life of just, basically every day, his father was killed, was assassinated, and so he was obviously in line for the throne, but he had to sort of come of age first. And the way that they would tell whether a boy was old enough, was a man essentially, and therefore could be challenged or just outright killed, was whether or not they had grown taller than the wheel on the cart. So there's this really terrifying thing of there's this like cousin of his who hates him, who keeps like thrusting him up against the wheel to see how tall he is. It's a bit like, when you go to the theme park and you're sort of 10 years old and you need to hit it's like a really dark version of that. And so when he knows he's getting there, he runs away because he's like, well, I'm obviously going to get killed. So he runs away and he falls in love with, or rather he is kind of put into an arranged marriage with the daughter of from another clan. And then they grow up and sort of fall in love and all that kind of stuff. And he eventually kind of comes back to challenge the guy who had taken over, who had been promising to kill him. And it's it's unbelievable, and he's in prison for years and years, and back and forth. Unbelievable story, and something I knew absolutely nothing about. So yeah, Mongol Rise of Genghis Khan is a good place to start for anybody who wants to see something kind of vaguely authentic, because they made a real thing out of trying to, not just in terms of the kind of racial makeup of the cast, but the actual.
The actual
settings
story itself.
and the mise en scène and the way it's filmed, and the whole thing feels very, very authentic.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Not that I know what the steps of sort of Mongolian steppe feels like to be in, but it convinced me.
It convinced you. I mean, that's the main thing, though. So if it's compelling, it's great art.
And it had obviously made an effort.
Yes.
It had obviously made an effort to be something approaching
authentic,
which was refreshing, given how little other periods and other forces had kind of cared for the authenticity of the story.
Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, where did we get to?
Back on track.
We're on commerce, I think.
Yeah. So yes. After we digress.
As we always do.
Yeah.